the Facebook, I have to go in and start a separate video stream so people who don't follow yet the American Soundbite can start following the American Soundbite. So I'm helping to share the love, if you will. Something that I recommend, I encourage, I request that you do the same. Let your friends on Facebook find out by starting a watch party. Okay, so I had to type some words, and typing and talking, I'm one of those people, two things at once. However, it does look like maybe indeed the watch party is started, I believe. Okay, so I think it's up and running. And I'm trying to debate whether I should do a little brief intro on video or if I should go right into the podcast, because you see, the topic I had for today did all kinds of prep work, you wouldn't believe the amount of work that goes into a 10-minute podcast. But we had everything all ready, all prepared, everything was done. And, well, you know what? I'm going to start the podcast, and then that's going to be my intro into the story. So, we've got Todd, we got Whit, we've got Frank. Hey, welcome to everybody on the Facebook. I'm glad that you're here so far, and as we get rolling, I know that we will have lots and lots more. Today is a doozy of a topic, so I'm going to adjust my audio a little bit and adjust my... And now we're going to get ready to go. You are listening to The American Soundbite, a podcast that features common sense thoughts of an everyday American. This is the start of the most valuable 10 minutes of your day, so congratulations on joining us. I'm certainly glad that you're here for the show today. Hey, before we start, I bet that if you took a second, you could think of multiple people, whether it's friends, family members, even coworkers, who may be a little less conversive than you are, or not just up to date on the topics of the day, and they would benefit from the American Soundbite. So why not find that share button? Let your friends on social media know that you start your day by listening to the American Soundbite, and, well, they would benefit from it too. The more people that listen, the better the conversation is, and, well, the more fun each and every day and trip to the water cooler is for you. So this morning, after doing all kinds of prep work, all kinds of organization and work to get ready for the monologue today, here on this American Soundbite podcast, I turned on Facebook and I saw people making posts about, just complaining. Anyhow, I saw crap on Facebook and I literally threw away the work that I had done because I don't know if it enraged me or it stunned me. It shocked me that people were this idiotic. So what I saw was a comment referencing a story from, some lamestream media news source, talking about how Betsy DeVos is seriously considering not funding schools that don't open this year. Okay, now wait, let me go back. The federal government is talking about or considering not funding schools that don't open. And this person was outraged by it. How dare those and then, of course, turned that rage to anybody that could even think about supporting any of these people who are destroying our children, our youth. Well, I mean, what is it that people don't understand in society today? First of all, what business does the federal government have to do in our local schools? Do you realize, each and every one of you, do you realize that every dollar that the federal government has comes out of your pocket, your paycheck, your employers, you personally give them money to decide what to spend it on? That's right. Every dollar from education comes out of your pocket. Unfortunately, every dollar that the federal government spends on education costs you $100. They need $100 from you to spend $1 in education because of all the expense of the bureaucracy at the federal level. $100 to spend $1. $100 that you earn or that they take from you to spend $1. But that's not even my point. If the federal government is sending money back to your local school, why do they need to take $100 from you to give it to give $1 to your school? Why can't your school district or your state, however it's set up, take that $100 from you and give, I don't know what their expense structure is, probably 95 of those dollars to your school? The point is, we don't need the federal government involved in local education. There is no point there. Well, there is one point in having a Department of Education, and I'm going to tell you what it is. If you're not smart enough or you've never taken the time to examine and really explore from an intellectual level what the reason that our federal government has a Department of Education. If there's a Department of Education, as there is today, and has been for, I don't know, actually a very limited time in the scope of our country, that Department of Education is run by the current administration at any given time. So right now, Donald Trump's administration gets to decide what the Department of Education focuses on. The Department of Education, by the way, focuses on what they are going to mandate your school teaches your children. Now, that means that Donald Trump is deciding today what your children learn. It also means that the next administration is going to go in and they're going to say, we don't care what Donald Trump taught people. We want to teach them our values. And the next administration wants to teach them their values. It is a propaganda tool and nothing else. The Department of Education was created and exists today solely to indoctrinate your children in the values of the current administration. That's it. That's right. There is no need for a federal Department of Education. Our states and our counties and our local school districts are much better at deciding what our children should be taught because those are more influenced by you directly. That's right. The less federal government involved in your child's education, the more input that you have into what your children are learning and how they're taught, how their education works. By the way, did you know that in, I believe, every state, certainly here in Ohio, and I know in Florida, and I'm pretty sure in every state, that your child can attend a virtual school for free? That's right. Your tax dollars actually go to pay for virtual schools like the K-12 Academy or Connections Academy. There's like 3 or 4 different schools that are accredited in each and every state and are paid for by your tax dollars already for your children to go to that school. In those schools, they have teachers that teach all the topics and everything else. But because your child is doing, well, self-learning, number one, they learn more. And number two, you get to decide what the values and what really information they learn. You don't have to be the teacher. You're not the educator. In fact, they call you a learning coach, or I don't know, something like that. Depends on the program. But while you're involved in their education, you're not actually teaching them, but you are teaching them the values that you want them to learn. Not some government bureaucracy, not some president that you may or may not agree with, not an administration that changes every 4 or 8 years, but you. The federal government has absolutely zero business in education. There isn't a need for it. It is redundant government, redundant bureaucracy, and it's absolutely asinine for us to give our hard-earned dollars to the federal government to spend on administration and then funnel a very small percentage of it back to our local schools. Money for schools should come from, well, our local communities. And we should have much more input in the quality and quantity and actual curriculum that our education offers our students. As long as it's at the federal level, you don't have that. The government owns your child's education. The government owns what it is that your child is going to learn, how they're going to learn it, and what they're going to believe. The federal government offers no advantage to education, offers no advantage to, well, much in our world, in our society today. And so anybody who sees that the federal government is deciding or threatening or talking about not sending funds to schools that aren't open. Okay, that's what really got me is number one, they're saying if you don't open, you don't need the money. Therefore, we're not going to give you the money. So you choose whether or not you need to open or not. It's your decision. Number one, okay, we shouldn't send money to schools that aren't operating because they don't have the expenses if their buildings aren't open. They literally save millions of dollars a year if their buildings aren't open. They don't need to exist if they're not going to open because there are already established virtual schools that will educate your children and they're already paid for. But more importantly than that, regardless of what you believe, if you're sucking off the teat of government and you believe that no matter what, that the federal government is the most important and valuable thing in your life, you're entitled to that opinion. But don't sit here and judge any of your neighbors, anyone in your community, or anybody anywhere on their choices, on their beliefs. Because when you sit there and call people names because they voted for somebody or they took an action or anything else, what you're trying to do is you're trying to intimidate them. What you're doing is you're bullying them. What you're doing is you're trying to influence, well, how people ultimately vote. And that's wrong. Your beliefs, regardless of whether they agree or disagree with somebody else, that does not make your beliefs right. They make them your beliefs, but everyone else's beliefs are entitled to the exact same level of respect and, just personal choice as yours. So if you want to get on social media and cry and whine and call names to people who have different beliefs than you, then have at it. But you know what? You are a bad person. Plain and simple. I don't say that about a lot of people. But if you're out there trying to intimidate and scare people and whatever to believe what you believe because you have no rational basis to convince them through a conversation or a debate or any other means, then yeah, you're the opposite of a good person. Like I said, seeing that post today, destroyed my whole plans for the episode. It's okay because this turned out pretty good and it obviously needed to be said. But the federal government doesn't belong in your child's education. You belong in your child's education. You are the most important person in your child's life. You make the biggest impact in their life. You should have a direct impact on their education. And giving it to the federal government, relying on the federal government to make decisions for you on what they should learn is wrong. And because the federal government wastes so much money, they shouldn't be involved in funding education. Education should maybe come from the states, but definitely come from the local communities. That's where it's important. That's where you have influence. That's where you can help decide how that money is spent, if you choose to get involved. But it's never a good idea to put it in the hands of any administration at the federal level. You have been listening to The American Soundbite. This is a podcast that features common sense thoughts of me, an everyday American. The last 14 minutes have been the most valuable 10 minutes of your day, and I really appreciate you being here. Hey, if you enjoyed the content, the topic of today, or just the format of the show, click on that like button. Let me know so that I keep doing it. If you have any comments, criticisms, or just snide remarks that you want to make, type them in the comment box. I do read those, and they do affect how I plan the show moving forward. While you're at it, right next to that like button down there, well, that's the share button. Let your friends, your family, your coworkers on social media know that you start your day by listening to the American Soundbite and that they would be a better person if they joined you each and every morning. Thanks a lot for being here. I hope you have a great day, and God bless. All right, and that is a wrap. 15 minutes and 10 seconds with our intro and our outro, which means that it's actually a little over 12 minutes. And that's kind of exactly where we want the show. I apologize for my phone ringing. Obviously, somebody needed to get in touch with me because I'm that important. But yeah, like I said, the topic of the show today was not going to be on education. It wasn't going to be about Facebook. It wasn't going to be anything that I talked about. But those two things, anybody relying on federal government is, well, they need to re-examine their values. And certainly anybody who thinks that they can intimidate others and call them names and belittle them because they have a different belief or voted for a different person, that just, yeah, that got me. So again, I'm rambling on. The show is over. We're 20 minutes into the video to the 12-minute podcast. And so I really thank you for joining me, and I look forward to